of monitoring e-bus operations. Few house rules for today's session would be please keep your camera and microphone off when the expert's presentation is on, and please keep your questions into the chat box and also raise your hands during the Q&A sessions at the end. So we'll be taking the questions and answers at the end of the session. And just for your information, this session is being recorded for further dissemination, and it will be kept onto our YouTube channel as well as onto our website. So today's agenda will be, firstly, I'll be taking you through the introduction session on the topic as well as on the speakers today. Then we'll have an expert presentation from our expert speaker, Ms. Lulu Xue from WRI China. And at the end, we'll be taking on the questions and answers. So today's topic of discussion will be monitoring e-bus operations. And the discussion will be around operation level challenges for the e-bus projects, and how could the bus transit operators monitor these e-bus operations, and which are the important parameters which should be considered at planning and tendering stage. And all this discussion will be done by taking an example or reference to the experience gained by the Chinese cities. So for today, our expert speaker is Ms. Lulu Xue. She works with WRI India as a mobility manager. She works towards public transport improvement and vehicle electrification projects in Chinese cities. She had worked on the technical assistance project to the National Transit Metropolis Demonstration Program, which was an initiative administered by Ministry of Transport China. Lulu holds a master's degree in urban planning from Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a bachelor's degree in geographical information systems from Peking University, China. A very warm welcome to Ms. Xue. And today, the moderators of the session will be myself. I'm Rohan Modi. I work with TUMIVolt, a global project at GIZ, and my colleague Victor Bustani. He'll be taking over the session for a Q&A session after the expert presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over the screen to Ms. Xue. Lulu, the screen is yours.
So can you hear me well and see the screen well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, Rohan, thank you very much for the kind introduction and the kind invitation. I'm Lulu Xue with WRI China. We are a global NGO, have many branch offices in Global South. I personally based in WRI China office, and today's talk is actually based on one of our research carried out in 2019. And first, it's well known that China has a very large number of e-buses. That's almost accounting for 97% of the global e-bus on the road, according to IEA. And China's battery electric buses here, as shown in the year of 2019, has consisted around of half of the entire bus fleet, and almost 80% of all the new energy vehicle buses in China, that's including the yellow part and the green part. And therefore, battery electric buses has become the majority bus technology here in China. And one thing to notice about this large number of e-buses in China is that it's not limited to a few numbers of cities like the well-known city of Shenzhen. In fact, numerous Chinese cities all have large numbers of e-buses in operation, including cities with a very cold temperature, like the city of Harbin, which is bordering Russia. And we also have less developed cities that also have large number of e-buses, like the small-sized third and first-tier Chinese cities, and also cities with mountain terrain also has large number of e-buses. Therefore, later when we talk about operation efficiency, actually covers these variety of cities. And here, before we jump into today's topic, I just would like to first highlight a couple of potential context-specific things. The first context-specific thing is the charging technology selection, because operation of e-buses would vary a lot with the charging technology selection. And here in China, the charging technology has converged mainly to two types of technology. One is slow charging, and the other is fast charging. So later on, when we talk about operation efficiency, it actually only speak to these two types of charging technologies. But another potential contact differences is the size of e-bus being adopted. This could also affect e-bus's operation efficiency because large e-buses would be more energy intensive. And many Chinese cities actually started up with small size e-bus for electrification, like the 6 to 8 meter e-bus adopted in the year of 2015. And the size of e-bus gradually evolved into larger ones. But still currently, China doesn't have many electric articulated buses or electric double-deckers, and the electrification of these two types of buses are still quite challenging. So if your cities are interested in operating these two types of e-buses, then what are going to be said today won't be applicable. And then let's go to today's topic. What promote us to do the research on bus operation efficiency in China? So first, we did a calculation on e-buses' total cost of ownership, and it turned out with a lot of the subsidies, e-buses' total cost of ownership has already reached parity with that for diesel buses in the year of 2016. So the key question is no longer how to reduce the cost of the e-buses. And at the same time, we have received many complaints from bus operators about the limited performances of e-buses after they buy, especially with the battery ranges. But we also noticed that the average battery ranges of e-buses after the year of 2018 is already above 300 kilometers. Therefore, the battery range shouldn't be an issue. So what causes the problem and how to improve operation efficiencies is the question we look at. So what we do is we collaborate with this National New Energy Vehicle Big Data Lab to collect city-level e-bus operation statistics in 15 Chinese cities. And the background of this data is that China's government required all the e-buses must install this called OBD system, so that bus manufacturers can monitor the operation of e-buses to avoid vehicle breakdowns or potential safety risk to transit users. And the same data of OBD were backed up in this national lab that we work with. A side point on the OBD data is that it's actually not a new practice. A lot of fossil fuel vehicles also have OBD data sent back to OEMs or national governments to monitor their air pollutant emissions. So it's just apply the same thing to electric vehicles. And for privacy concerns, the data we have is aggregated on city level, and we don't have individual e-bus data, although the national lab do have individual e-buses data. And initially we saw the OBD data would tell a lot of stories, However, some initial data analysis shows the data have no regularities. Therefore, we also conduct surveys to bus operators and the transit officials in these cities to make sense of the data. And since our data are aggregated on city level, we make sure the cities are representative. So for the 15 cities, we have covered all different level of e-bus adoption, as shown in the yellow bar here, and different economic development stages of the cities, and different natural environment like cold climate and mountain landscapes. And we also make sure the cities cover as many East-Bus brands as possible, because China actually has a lot of e-bus manufacturers. And although it helps lower the e-bus price, but it creates a lot of challenges for bus operators to make the right decision. So we make sure our study have a good coverage of all different e-bus brands. And lastly, the choice of charging technology is super important. It has a great impact on the ways e-bus are operated. So for example, for slow charging vehicles, it doesn't have many recharge during operation. So battery range is the top most important factor. But for fast charging vehicles, it actually has a lot of recharging opportunities during operation. Therefore, charging speed as well as battery range are important factors. And also interesting to note that for faster charging vehicles, they do not necessary to have overnight charging because the charging speed is very fast. So faster charging vehicles, they can get quickly charged up right before they're pulling out for services. And here in our analysis, the cutoff point for fast charging and slow charging is the 1.6 C, which is different from China's standard 3C, because based on our survey, we have seen that e-bus around 1.3 C already operate in this fast charging way. So we use this 1.6 C as a cutoff point. And our sample cities have a good coverage of these two type of charging technology. So we have typical slow charging cities like Zhengzhou and Shenzhen, and we also have typical faster charging cities like Beijing and Guiyang. And more interestingly, we also have hybrid cases like Nanjing and Suzhou, where they both have faster charging vehicles and slow charging vehicles. Like for the case of Suzhou, they are moving from faster charging vehicles to, they are moving away from slow charging vehicles to faster charging, whereas Nanjing is the other way around. And then with all the sample data, the question comes down to how to numerically evaluate city level e-bus operation efficiency. So first, I need to highlight one thing is that bus electrification does not necessarily lead to changes in route alignment or changes in operation timetable, because these changes are determined by transit user demand. Therefore, if the user demand didn't change, there is no reason to change route alignment or operation table just for the sake of bus electrification. Under these preconditions, the bus operation efficiency are evaluated by three metrics, and they pretty much similar. So the first efficiency metric is the vehicle availability rate. This is defined as the number of e-bus deployed for service in a particular workday, divided by the number of active e-buses registered in the city. The indicator usually measuring vehicles downtime or backup vehicle needed. As a benchmark, diesel bus usually have a vehicle availability rate of above 19%, and e-bus here in China, in the sample city, have much lower availability rate. And the reasons could be fold. One is e-bus have more downtime, or e-bus have more backup vehicles. In the worst scenario, in some cities, they just don't use e-bus after purchasing because they're not fit for operation. And lastly, it could also be the reason with data transmission. And the second metric is the city level average daily mileage of e-bus. On the national level, the Ministry of Transport do the statistics, and the average daily mileage of e-buses was 123 kilometers, nearly half of that for diesel buses. But there were a lot of variations across cities. Some cities like Shenzhen and Zhengzhou are doing really well with larger daily mileage, while other cities with very low daily mileage. However, cautions should be given when using daily mileage as the only efficiency metrics. This is especially the case for China. As mentioned earlier, Chinese cities tend to first electrify community bus route or feeder bus routes that usually with short daily mileage. In this case, short daily operating mileage is not a bad thing. It actually won't indicating the operation efficiency is affected. However, as more buses get electrified in longer routes, short daily mileage would be a bad thing. Therefore, in our study, the daily mileage is examined in combination with e-bus penetration rates. And the last efficiency metrics is actually taking one step further to look at route level replacement rates between diesel buses and e-buses. And this metric is more detailed and better related to operation. So in general, in a regular bus route, there are three types of vehicles. One is called peak-only bus that operate only in peak hours. And these peak-only buses have very short operation hours and short daily mileage. Therefore, they are quite easy for electrification. And the second type of buses are called 1.5 duty buses. These buses usually have moderate operating hours and moderate daily mileage. And in China, 1.5 duty vehicles usually need one drivers to do the work, but on extended working hours. And they are also relatively easy for electrification. And the last one is called all-day bus. These buses are used very extensively with very long operating hours and daily mileage, and usually require two drivers for each bus to fulfill their daily schedule. And this is the most difficult one for electrification. And the actual types of vehicles and the percentage of all-day buses actually vary from route to route and city to city. We have seen some Chinese cities that doesn't have 1.5 duty bus, but we also see some Chinese cities that has only 1.5 duty buses. So it depends. And then the question comes down to how to replace all-day bus with electric ones. We basically have different options, and different options have different efficiency implications. And the first option is to have two e-bus to replace one diesel bus, and the daily mileage of the diesel bus are split equally between the two e-buses. And the second option is to have the first e-bus to take on more operation mileage, usually equal to 1.5 duties. Then the second e-bus to finish the rest. Since the second bus still have potentials to support more e-buses, so it can work as backup bus for another e-bus that also operate on 1.5 duties. So this one is called a 2 versus 3 replacement. And the last option is have the first e-bus to stretch on its greatest potential, and then the second e-bus will have a relatively small mileage gap to fill, and the second bus can work as backup bus for more e-buses that operating like the first one. And in China, based on our survey, most cities are using option number 1 and option number 2. And there were only a few cities that are using the last option. And then we take a further step to see what causes this and how to improve operation efficiency. And there are mainly 3 causes. One is vehicle problem, the second is lack of chargers, and the last is lack of optimization of bus scheduling and blocking. And according to our survey to bus operators and the transit authorities, vehicle problems and the lack of chargers are the primary reasons. So first, for the vehicle problem, here's the most important question: what technical specification would be required for e-buses that won't affect operation efficiency? So as mentioned earlier, we should distinguish slow charging and faster charging. For slow charging e-bus, battery range would be most important factor affecting operation efficiency. So the longer range the e-bus get, the better efficiency the operation will be. But for faster charging buses, it look at both battery range and the charging speed. So if the battery range is not long enough or the charging speed is not fast enough, it will both affect operation efficiency. But the actual battery range or charging speed requirement is very location specific, depend on many factors like route length, layover time, number of terminal points, and the charger availability. So as bus operators, they often need to do more calculations to determine the specification for fast charging buses. Here is an example for how to do this calculation for fast charging vehicles. So for the case number 1, if there is a sufficient number of chargers along a route, then the e-buses can get recharged at each round trip. Then the battery range could be 50 kilometers. That's enough to maintain the operation efficiency needed for this route. And equally important for operation efficiency is the charging speed that needs to ensure charging during the 15 minutes layover time at this terminal point will allow the e-bus to fulfill the next round trip. That's the 30 kilometers. So this is the e-bus specification for this case. However, for the same route, if all else equal, but there is not enough numbers of chargers, that means when the e-bus first come back to the terminal after round trip number 1, all the chargers are occupied, then they have to continue for the second round trip and get charged right after the second round trip. And in this case, battery range is larger than the first case. It should be about 100 kilometers, assuming the max DOD is 40%. And similarly, the charging speed within 15 minutes layover time should support 2 round trips. That's 6 kilometer operation. So for faster charging e-buses, and if you have more terminal points and you have different route lengths, then the calculation would vary as well. So for faster charging e-buses, it need more localized calculation. And then after we determine the e-bus specification requirement, one thing is to make sure the e-bus we purchase, its real-world performances is in line with its specification. In other words, if if we want to buy a e-bus with 300-kilometer battery range, we need to make sure we didn't end up with a e-bus with 150-kilometer range. The worst case did happen in China. So actually, battery range changes do exist, and this is very often mainly due to different drive cycles, like weather buses running more often on highways. And this is also due to cold weather temperature or AC usage in both summertime and wintertime. And similarly, charging speed is not constant over time as well. And also the labeled ranges by the bus manufacturers are not reliable either. This is an interesting study done in China, benchmark different e-bus brand manufactured by different e-bus manufacturers. And it actually shows that e-bus manufacturers tend to inflate their e-bus ranges. And the second thing to affect e-bus operation efficiency is the lack of chargers. In general, slow charging buses need need more chargers, and for faster charging buses need fewer chargers. And this is easy to understand because faster chargers have a high vehicle turnover. Therefore, it saves the number of chargers needed. However, sequence-wise, it's not first determine the vehicle's charging technology, then determine the number of chargers being needed. Oftentimes, it's the other way around. It's just when we find we have difficulties to install chargers in a city, then we ended up with one particular type of charging technology. And this is an example of city of Chongqing that doesn't have land space for bus terminals or depots, and the buses overflow to streets. You can see from the photo here, bus park overnight on streets. So given this situation, local bus operators choose fast charging because it doesn't need a lot of chargers. So when we complain the chargers are not in place, government are not supportive, perhaps one of the reasons we should to look at the operation themselves to see if they get the vehicle right. And also there were multiple reasons leading to the difficulties for charger installation. They are mainly due to 2 reasons. One is land space limitation. The other is limited grid capacities. So in the end, cities would need to engage more department like urban planning department or the utility department to solve the issue, and usually take around 1 year in China to make all the coordination and solve the problems. So planning charging infrastructure needed to take place way much before the vehicle purchase. And lastly, for bus operation scheduling and the blocking that need to be optimized as well to ensure the operation efficiency. Bus operating scheduling and blocking will have to be updated anyway after vehicle electrification, as shown here. However, since e-bus are new thing, different cities would need different update strategies. For example, some cities have often asked this question: shall e-bus prevent charging at peak hours? We have the different cities actually have different answers. So for slow charging cities, they try to avoid peak hour charging. However, for fast charging cities, avoid charging at peak hours is unavoidable. So there is no one size fits all solutions. Cities need to make their own updates on operation scheduling and blocking. And actually, updating operation scheduling and blocking is one thing, and optimize it is another thing. When we optimize the e-bus scheduling and blocking, it confounded by a lot of the new factors that haven't been considered for all the diesel bus operation, like the charging duration versus the layover duration, battery range versus the daily mileage need, and so on and so forth. And sometimes if we want to make the scheduling or blocking very optimal, we need the support of the softwares. And then in China, some cities have developed their own software, like Zhengzhou. Other cities choose to purchase commercial softwares. But most of the cities we have seen still use manual calculation. In some emerging economies, like Brazil, they're doing much better than Chinese cities. They already adopt scheduling software for diesel buses, and this would be an easier transition for bus operators there. And once we have operation schedule, it's important to make sure it's implemented. It's often done by real-time monitoring of e-bus operation. And this is often, again, using the vehicle OBD system. And through the system, bus operators can monitor real-time bus locations, battery SOCs, and even identify safety risk of e-buses like normal temperature of the batteries. And actually tracking this information is not new. It's already quite common for diesel bus operations in some countries. And usually these type of information is for dynamic dispatching or operation improvement. However, monitoring e-buses real-time operation can provide more added values. For example, it can help improve e-bus drivers' driving behavior by recovering more energy from the regenerative braking. It can make e-bus more energy efficient. And it can also spot a safety risk for e-bus that's already in operation in real time, and then send the vehicles for maintenance. So that's pretty much about of all of the research. Here is just to quickly recap. So for bus operators and the transit authorities at the bus electrification planning stage, it would be better to first plan the sequence of bus electrification. And based on our observation in China, the buses in the feeder routes and peak only bus or 1.5 duty bus in the regular routes are low-hanging fruit for electrification. So do not try to set the bar too high to get to first electrify all the buses from the very beginning if you don't have a lot of experience on e-bus operation. And also, bus operators need to consider charger availability when deciding the e-bus technical specification. If we have very long route, it actually doesn't matter which technology we choose. However, if we have limited space to install chargers, we pretty much limited our options to fast charging vehicles. And also, there were some studies on the cost of faster charging vehicles, and it shows even with charging infrastructure costs included, the cost of faster charging vehicles are similar to slow charging vehicles. So the cost won't be an issue. And also, determining what the e-bus to buy is not an easy task. It cannot be done simply by copy paste other cities' experience. So do the homework before you buy. In reality, there are some practical factors to consider as well, besides what's been said for faster charging and slow charging. For example, we have seen some Chinese cities that use only one specification for all the bus route in the city. And we also see other cities that tailor-made the e-bus specification for different routes. And both have pros and cons. If they tailored for different routes, they may lose the operation flexibility of e-buses once the route gets reorganized. However, if they have one common specification, it would drive us the best purchase price. So cities need to do the trade-off, need to do the homework beforehand. And then for vehicle quality assurance, there are multiple solutions as well. In China, one of the solutions is to send staff to the bus manufacturers for on-site supervision of the vehicle production after you made the purchase. And second options would be when the first batch of e-buses are manufactured, we could do some test runs to verify the e-bus specification. And the table here lists some of the methods to validate the e-bus specifications based on the test runs. And I also want to point out, very importantly, government or associations do have a role to play. For example, China's Ministry of the Transport helps city bus operators to get high quality e-buses by organizing this national testing event to evaluate the different e-bus brands. And this is the photo of one of the tested event. And lastly, as mentioned earlier, bus operators need also to update and optimize the operation scheduling and the blocking. But one important first step is to monitor the e-bus operation in real time through the OBD system, and the operators can also get software to improve operation efficiencies or attend peer-to-peer knowledge exchange events. And lastly, bus operators may also take baby steps to continuously improve operation efficiencies. That's all for today's presentation. Questions are welcome.
Thank you very much, Lulu. I think it was a very interesting presentation for all of us, and many congratulations to you and your team as well on this interesting study. I think it not only helps the government to drive or steer the industry towards efficient e-buses, bringing efficient e-buses on road, but also supports the cities in planning their own new e-bus projects with prudent practices. And additionally, it also brings up accountability for the bus manufacturers on the products which they are launching in the market, and as well as supporting supporting the cities with. So I already have many questions myself, but I would consider to give this opportunity right now to our participants. And without further ado, maybe, yes, Victor, I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Johan. So Lulu, thank you very much as well from my side. I see that we are not such a big group, so I would like to ask if the ones that want to, we are recording, so the ones that want to turn the camera on, please feel free to turn the camera on and ask directly the questions to Lulu. And hello, I see already some faces. Well, you have to say your name. I don't know if I will say it right. So
yeah, my name is Phyla. I have a question for Lulu. I'm from ITDP, based in Jakarta. So I saw that the bus replacement is more than like most of it is more than two. Like one diesel bus will be replaced by two electric bus. Is that means that the efficiency of the charging infrastructure there is not yet effective, because when we do the calculations on the new system for the bus electrification, we always aim to have like one like one diesel bus replaced by one, and then we will analyze the what kind of charging infrastructure or the range of the battery suited for that routes. Yeah.
thank you. Lulu, can you right away answer? I see another hands, but first let's answer this one.
Thank you very much for this question. Perhaps my last page of the presentation showed this. Basically, based on our observation, it's very difficult for operators to achieve one-to-one replacement of diesel bus and e-buses at the very beginning. So when you do all the plannings, either planning of bus electrification or the planning of charging infrastructures, you need to first perhaps make a rough calculation, what is the replacement along the route, and then decide the number of charging infrastructure needed. And also, like mentioned in the slides, the number of charging infrastructures would also affect the selection of charging of the vehicles, especially the faster charging vehicles. This is a quick answer. So don't overestimate the capacities of e-buses. Be realistic.
Thank you very much. I see Shiamasis with the hands. Can you?
Yes.
Yes, please.
I'm not, switching on the video because the bandwidth is having some problems. So I had to drop off
No
and
problem.
rejoin the call several times. Okay. So Lulu, fantastic presentation. I really liked, and there are some really good insights. So just to introduce myself, I'm from WRI India, and I'm currently working on a project on electric bus operation, and that's why your presentation is all the more relevant for my work. Now, just to bring the question in the Indian context, so we generally deal with two questions. So whether it is a good idea to opt for a large battery pack for the e-bus and do slow charging overnight, or whether it is more effective to opt for a smaller battery pack and go for fast charging during the operating hours, which we call opportunity charging, at the depot or at the terminal. Now, according to you, uh, out of these two options, what should be the best way to improve operational efficiency without incurring higher investment?
That's just a $1 billion question. This is also confronted by a lot of the Chinese cities. As mentioned earlier, we do have hybrid cases where cities have both slow charging vehicles and faster charging vehicles because they have hard time to determine which type of charging technology would be best for them. So they evolve either from slow charging to faster charging or fast charging to slow charging. We think there's no right answer for this. You just pick the best one suited for your city. And from our observation, faster charging vehicles cost will be similar to slow charging vehicles cost if considering the infrastructure cost, because faster charger is more expensive than slow charger. But you're also mentioned the case of opportunity charging, which could save the vehicle cost a lot, but opportunity charging would require a lot of infrastructure investment. We didn't talk about this technology in our slides because China doesn't have a lot of opportunity charging, especially cable charging or pantograph charging, because the infrastructure cost is relatively high. Also, it would affect a city's visual appearance. But we do see in some cities, like ADB is supporting the city of Jinan to adopt opportunity charging, and the city I work with in Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, is also considering opportunity charging. So, but currently our research didn't cover opportunity charging, and we didn't quite look into the cost of opportunity charging. But if according to your study, opportunity charging save cost and won't greatly affect operation efficiency, then it could be a good option, depending on if city officials would care much, whether they would care about the city's visual appearance or not. I'm not sure if I answered your question clearly, but let me know.
No, thank you. I mean, I understand that it's a very complex kind of problem actually to solve, and I don't think there is any one particular right answer for this. And you rightly mentioned that each city authority has to decide its own suitable strategy. I think it's a fine balancing act between opting for a larger battery pack, which again has a cost, or going for a fast charger, which again has a cost. So ultimately, which costs less could be the deciding factor in this regard. Actually, in India, generally the opportunity charging is done during the shift change, which gives an hour of time window to do this charging. But then there are some city authorities, they're going for the big battery back process without having the headache of taking care of opportunity charging. But anyway, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see more hands. I don't know if anyone. I see it now. Ho-Han, please.
Yes. Hi. So, Lulu, I have a question. Maybe it's a very slide-specific question, so I'll try to, just paste the slide into the chat. So on slide number 18, you shared that on this graph, uh, that generally the cities in China are using the options 1 and 2 rather than the option number 3, which is, you know, the efficient replacement option. So my question is, through this study, and I also understand from your presentation that Ministry of Transport is quite actively monitoring the situation of e-buses operation in the country. How is the ministry or the local governments reacting to this, and how are they pushing the cities to maybe adopt more efficient replacement options in maybe the coming procurement cycles?
That's a very good question. The national government is really paying attention to this issue, acknowledging cities vary from cities are not the same. The solutions would vary from cities to cities. And what they do is mainly on three fronts. One is for the vehicle procurement, as mentioned in the presentation. National government has organized the annual test of the e-buses by different bus manufacturers to give the guidance for bus operators to make the right decision, because it's not the battery ranges that are not sufficient. It's often the case with fluctuations of battery range or the inflation of the battery range that's misguiding the vehicle procurement. And the second is infrastructure investment, especially charging infrastructure investment. The national government already covered the part of grid capacity upgrade, especially that part of investment is out of the equation. It's already undertaken by national government. And then for the charger investment, they are mostly subsidized by local government. So in that regard, national government can only give local government some guidance, but it's within the local government's authority. But there are already a lot of local subsidies in place. So this should also be solved. And the last issue is regard optimization of the operation. And at this point, there were a lot of workshops and peer-to-peer city learning taking place in China. And many of the experience actually we get is from these workshops. So we find these workshops very, very useful. In fact, the missing pieces in the workshop, in the ongoing discussion at this point in China, is the using of scheduling and blocking software. China doesn't have, as mentioned, Chinese cities do not have the tradition of using scheduling software. They do the calculation manually, so it will be a sharp learning curve. So for bus operators to grab the usage of the software, we see that's a great gap.
Thank you.
Okay. If no one has a question, I have one following up on Ho-Han's questions. Regarding those efficient parameters that you use for the study, and there also you mentioned monitoring services that are also common in China. Is it already a standard when you are procuring e-buses or contracting bus operator, or if there is also a benchmarking where you say here is from here, you know, we can hire, and if not, it's not possible in the to procure this type of technology. Something like that already in place in China.
No, actually, no. By the time when we do the research, we see the gap, so that we begin to do the research. And when we do the research, we also see there are a lot of variations, like the route length. It will have a lot of influence on the EBAS technical specification, as well as some operation aspect like layover time, the overall timetable. Therefore, we didn't quite came up with very concrete numbers. At this moment, the BAS technology has improved a lot, and the battery sizes is no longer an issue, especially in China with a lot of government subsidies. So we have seen more cities begin to adopt slow charging vehicles because the battery sizes, they don't care about the battery sizes, and the battery's energy intensity has improved a lot. Hope it answer your question.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we have time still for one question, I guess. So if someone,
May I ask one more question?
please.
Thank you. So another query in my mind is what I see that there are some e-bus models which can be charged using AC chargers, like the K9 model of BYD. So I think they use 80 kilowatt AC charger, and then there are other e-bus models which are mostly charged with DC chargers. According to you, Lulu, what should be the preferred charging technology? Is it better to use AC charger or a DC charger? Why I'm asking is because if it's an AC charger, the charging rate would be primarily determined by the power rating of the onboard charger in the bus. So even if one uses a higher charger rating or EVSE rating, but the onboard charger size is lower, the charging rate will anyway come down in spite of adding weight to the vehicle. So what should be the efficient way? Because I see a lot of BYD buses getting charged with 80 kilowatt AC charger.
Usually, we see a lot of the DC chargers in China. The consideration is having higher charging powers, and you're right. They can also help the vehicles to remove the OBC onboard charger away from the vehicle. But the main consideration is to have higher charging powers for buses to make it charge faster.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vikananda. I think with that we are. You have another question?
It wasn't me, actually.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Lulu, for amazing presentation. So I saw in your slide you mentioned about factors that affecting the battery range, which is the AC consumption, driving behavior, battery degradation. So in the planning process, how deep should we take in this factor to consideration? Like for example, when we want to estimate the battery range, and then when we want also to compare it to the existing driving distance, should we like consider like the N years of battery degradations or like 5% of AC consumption? So what is your recommendation for that? Thank you.
Actually, China did a lot of numerical study on this. They first did study on because EBAS's energy intensity under different drive cycles, temperatures, use of ACs, and if my memory serves me right, driving cycles, especially driving on highways with speed over 120 kilometers per hour, the energy consumption per kilometer drive is the highest. That means the mileage would drop much faster in this case. And then the use of AC in the wintertime, because that use AC as a heater, actual heater, and then the drop of the mileage range the second. And the use of AC in the summertime, that's only to a last extent will affect ranges, and also wintertime. In the wintertime, the ranges would also drop significantly. So perhaps the cities can do some testing based on its own driving cycles and its own nature environment. There is not much room of some percentage. But in China, usually we don't have a lot of highway drive cycle, and we only have a lot of winter situation where the mileage we just divided by 2 because winter temperature has a strong effect, especially the use of AC as heater. The use of AC in the summertime wouldn't discount the ranges that much, but I couldn't give a rule of thumb percentage on this one. For battery degradation, 20% degradation of SOC would be possible. So you need to budget 20% buffer on your battery after like around 80-year operation.
I hope it answers your question. I see some people joining now. I would like them to use this opportunity to say, unfortunately, you missed this, but we're gonna have more, and this presentation will be available as well in our YouTube channel. So if you didn't have the time to watch the whole presentation, you can go to our TUMI channel in YouTube, and also stay tuned and at our webpage, the TUMI Charging Station. We're gonna soon have new webinars available for all of you. I would like to thank you again, Lulu, for your time. It was really a very detailed and interesting presentation. I'd like to thank Ho-Han for the organization as well, and thank everyone for joining for the very interesting questions as well. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everyone. Bye bye.